To be deep in history is to cease to be Protestant, or so said Cardinal John Henry Newman on his departure from the Anglican Church. Over the past few years, people have sent me this quote many times because I study history and I'm a Protestant and I look into history very deeply. For a bit of background, I did my undergraduate degree in biblical studies and I went to seminary and I focused on historical theology. So over the years, I've spent quite a bit of time looking at the church and how it's evolved and transformed from the time that Jesus walked the earth with his disciples. Another thing to note is that I spent my entire professional career as a pastor at various churches. And over the years, I found myself drawn to and curious about the apostolic traditions. Some of my best friends are Indian Orthodox or Syro-Malabar, Malankara Catholic, or Mar-Thoma. And I look at these St. Thomas Christian traditions and I see something that I don't find anywhere else. A history that has held the people to a faith since the first century, since right after the time of Jesus. And I see traditions and theology and practices that you find in every corner of the world at Catholic or Orthodox churches. And so as a lover of history and a lover of the church, I also find myself inside of these churches and communities very often. Because the way that I learn is I want to see it to believe it. I want to step in fully and not just read about it. And it's interesting. Now more than ever, I find myself yearning to be at a Holy Qurbana, at a Catholic church or an Orthodox church or a Mar-Thoma church more than I ever thought that I would. I highly value and respect the way that the apostolic churches regard the Eucharist and the priesthood and confession of sin. And honestly, above all else, prayer. I tell you all of this because maybe you're like me and you find yourself in a position where you grew up in one tradition and now you've experienced another and it's enticing and it seems interesting and maybe it's offering you something that you've never had before. But if you are in a similar spot, I encourage you to take your time. Don't feel like you have to make the jump and you have to switch churches right away. That's not the goal. The goal is to keep your eyes fixed on Jesus and be in a place where you can worship him in fullness and truth. The last thing that I will say is that I will always be grateful for my upbringing in Protestant churches and my time spent working there. I would not be who I am today without that experience. And at the same time, I'm grateful for how God has revealed to me new things. It doesn't have to come down to an either or, but I believe that when I look back and look forward, it can be a both and. I guess we'll see how this goes.